Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's something that you've witnessed that no one else would believe that you saw it? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
My 5-year-old son won a ribbon at a school for an event. Driving down a busy road in our car, and it flew out the window. I did a U-turn and drove back on the other side of the median trying to see his red ribbon. No luck. Did another U-turn and drove again down the road. I did this 3 more times looking for the ribbon. Looked in the back and told my kid, sorry, it's gone. Just then, it flew back in his window and landed on his lap. He lost the ribbon later that day at his piano class. Probably 15 years ago, I was on the St. Mark's, New York City, with a friend on a late spring afternoon looking around. A guy drives by and throws a paper bag outside the window and speeds off. We're like 19 or 20 at this point, so we obviously have to look inside. Find at least $3,000 in hundreds in there, and we're like, yeah. About to bring our asses to the anime figure literal hole in a wall that used to exist over there. Guy probably early 50s comes over and says, hey, think you got my paper bag. Neither of us were dressed to start sprinting, and he pretty politely grabs it from my friend's hands, says thanks for giving it back, and buys us both a bubble tea with the cash. No one ever believes this, but it's true. Crystal Girl, if you're out there, we both know what happened. I was on the beach in Galveston when I was a little kid with my family in the 90s. I was in water about up to mid-chest when a massive alligator came swimming past me. I hightailed it out of there and reported the encounter to my family, who all dismissed it as driftwood or a large fish of some kind. I know what I saw. Since then, I've seen numerous reports of alligators in salt water and lounging around on beaches, so I've been vindicated to myself at least. Family never believed it though. Finding my shoes in the middle of the yard after a restless night during which I had a repeating dream of the alarm clock stopping at 9:14. I woke up, opened my eyes, and it was exactly 9:14 in the morning. Went to the hallway, saw Dad getting dressed to go outside, and exchanged greetings. He told me it had been another freezing night. It was the middle of winter and very snowy. Dad proceeded to open the locks, old house and door too, manual interlock plus regular, and went out to get the mail. I went to get some breakfast. Dad came back holding my shoes. I found these in the yard. How did you manage to get that stiff upper lock open? You can't even reach it. I stared at the frozen shoes and says, I didn't. Then my dad was visibly confused for a moment. Right. He left the room and we never spoke of it again. For context, my dad did not pull pranks like these. My feet were warm and clean when I woke up, and there were no footprints on the snow before my dad went outside, caught a glimpse of the yard. I still have no idea what had happened. I saw a cow get hit by a semi-truck once. Country road, low light, just before dawn. Cow got out of and made its way onto the road. Truck was coming up over a little raised area. I was coming up the other direction. Truck's lights fell on the cow. Driver started to swerve into my lane, saw me, steered back into his lane and plowed into the cow doing about 50 miles per hour. Cow got tossed into the air, flipped once, landed and bounced. Cow got back and walked away. Told my coworkers when I got to the office. They said I needed some coffee. Once when I was 18, I pulled an all-nighter on my patio with my best mate. At about 5 a.m., he spotted the newspaper car driving down the street, lobbing papers onto everyone's lawns. He jumped out of his chair, sprinted to the front yard, and pulled off the best-looking one-handed diving catch you've ever seen, plucking the paper out of mid-air an inch off the ground. We cheered and hugged like we just won the World Cup. No one believed us, but it happened. And somehow, 20 years on, it's still one of the best things we've ever seen. On the night of June 10, 2010, I was in my bed in the camper my family was camping in at Albert Pike Campground and was watching the lightning while trying to fall asleep. Before I fell asleep, I swear to everything that I saw a skull face materialize in the sky, looking at me. That night at about 2:30 a.m., my dad woke us all up because the camper was filling with water and the river was beating against it violently. We all almost drowned, but managed to escape the water and made it to some nearby cabins on a tall hill. But 20 people died. It was a horrific night and saw many bodies get dragged out of the river. I was only 14. Nobody believes me when I tell them what I saw. Kind of cheating, as it's not my story but my dad's story, but it feels like it fits. He's older now, 72 I believe, but I've heard this story every other year since I was a child. I'm 30 now. When he was younger, he would spend his summers in Maryland fishing along the Nanticoke River. He claims, and always has, that one summer he was fishing with a friend in the early morning when he and his friend heard rustling coming from some bushes. Not a second later, a little man my dad described as being 3 feet tall popped out of the bushes and ran across the river to the other side. He said the little man was wearing a suit that looked like something an astronaut would wear. Is he telling the truth? I think so. Was he on drugs? I don't know, maybe. I've never known him as a liar or drug user. Nevertheless, it's always fascinated me.
I apologize for the noise going on behind me right now. And in this video, we're running around. My daughter has a play today. She's playing one of the trolls in Frozen. So not exactly the lead, but I think that Fixer Upper is a great song for that show. So we're looking forward to it, and we're leaving in like 20 seconds. So I'll give you guys a recap tomorrow, but I hope everyone is doing well. And I got some shout-outs coming up tomorrow as well. So thanks again, guys. Enjoy the weekend, and I'm grateful that you're here.
Old biker dude got too old to roar around the neighborhood in his regular Harley, so he got a 3-wheeled HD to make loud noises on more comfortably. One afternoon, I was walking home from middle school, and he comes roaring around this tight right-hand turn and tips it right in front of me. His open-faced helmeted head clipped the median and snapped off, slowly rolling down the street in front of me. No one else was around. My parents didn't believe me until all the neighbors were gossiping about it. I was a part-time nanny for some doctors just after university, and I lived in a cabin below their manor house on a lake. One night, I was walking home to my cabin from up on the street where I parked. I had to walk around to the back of their house and then down a lot of stairs to my cabin. As I came around the backside of their 3-story home, I saw a large brown weasel-looking creature with huge eyes, crouched on the windowsill on the lowest floor, just staring intently at the 5 girls, the 3 sisters had friends over, sitting on the couch all close together watching a movie. It was dusk, and the room was glowing. I startled the weasel creature, and it made an extremely shriek sound, flew from the windowsill across the path in front of me, about 10 to 15 feet, and into the bushes where it just vanished. The girls really did look adorable, all snug together and happy. I saw something from another realm that night, watching them. It was much larger than any squirrel or weasel or marten or anything in our area, the size of a lemur. Its eyes were enormous. It was brown, its crouch and gaze that of extreme intelligence, and not like any animal I've ever seen. My grandma lived in a rural area with about 12 acres of woodland which belonged to her behind her house. My cousins and I grew up in those woods. It was probably about 2 or 3 miles from the nearest neighbor. Once when I was about 7 or 9 years old, we were playing tag in the woods, and I was running fast and getting far away so I wouldn't be it. I got to a resting point up the hill where I could see everyone, probably about 100 feet away. I went around the tree to hide, and leaning against the adjacent tree was a man in a nice suit and shiny shoes. He was sweaty and panting, and I remember the top of his shirt unbuttoned, his tie loosened. I asked, "Are you playing too?" But he put his hand to his lips to shush me and motioned me to go away. I ran back down to my cousins and told them we needed to tag the man. We went up, he was gone. No one believes me that someone was there. A gigantic basking shark swarm passed some friends of mine. It got within 2 feet of them. Basking sharks are harmless. There's no records of them ever hurting a person, even unintentionally, but holy shit are they big. Like bigger than an 18-wheel tractor trailer big. Along with being big, they're incredibly fierce looking. Two-toned, green and black spotty stripes, like something out of Jurassic Park. Their mouth is unlike any other creature you'll ever see. gentle giants, but they sure don't look it. This isn't scary or supernatural, just completely lucky. A couple of years ago, my dad and I were going fishing on his farmer's strip cut, big pond lake left after strip coal mine closes. When we got there, the chain on the gate had a lock on it. We called the farmer and said, "Oh, just cut it off." I told them to stop locking that. We didn't have anything to cut the lock, so my dad got his shovel out of the back of the truck to break it. The lock was dangling, holding the chair between the two pieces of gate. I thought, no way will this work. So he smacked the shit out of that lock and it trampolined like 30 feet in the air. When it came back down, it landed back on part of the chain. Just hooked itself in a chain link again. Pure luck. I haven't told many people this because I think I'll sound completely insane, but here it goes. So my ex-girlfriend and I used to go for late night walks in our neighborhood during the summer. This particular story happened during the summer of 2010. I can no longer remember the specific date, and we left our house at around 3 a.m., judging by how long we walked and where we were. I'd say this particular event happened around 3:30 a.m. So, my ex and I have a different recollection of how it started. I remember seeing it first and pointing it out to her, but she remembers seeing it first and pointing it out to me. I remember walking over there out of curiosity and bringing her along, and she remembers walking over there out of concern and bringing me along. I think what actually happened is probably a mix of both. Anyways, I saw the silhouette of what I thought was a little person like a dwarf standing by a large bush in someone's front yard. They were talking excitedly and laughing, seemingly to themselves. Right away, the whole thing had an uncanny feeling to it, but I was just drawn to it, and I had to go over there to get a closer look. Now, my ex remembers seeing it and thinking it was a child in distress and going over to it out of concern. Either way, it became aware that we were approaching, and it started going, "Oh, oh, oh." And each time it said that, it peeked at us by slightly turning its head. I can still hear it and see it to this day. It was so freaky. The hair standing up on my arms right now, just remembering it. Okay, so this next part is where I'm going to sound completely insane. My ex asked if it was okay and reached out for it, and as she did, it turned around sharply, and whatever we were looking at, I swear to God, was not human. I don't know how to describe it because I've never seen anything like it again, but it was a hairy little troll, and its face looked like a bat's face. My ex always said it looked like a little goblin man from the Harry Potter movies. I personally don't think so, but that's not what she thinks. It was dark, but there was enough light for both of us to see. It's possible one of us had a better angle than the other, so that one of our descriptions is more accurate. Or, like I was saying before, it's probably a mix of both, anyway. When it turned around, it made this high-pitched screeching noise, and I instinctively grabbed my ex to protect her. Within a few seconds, it frantically stumbled into the forest, and it was gone. My ex and I booked it home as fast as we could and just stayed in bed all night, and morning freaked the f*** out before we could even talk about it. The whole thing from the time we first saw it to it disappearing into the forest lasted probably 30 seconds. And it was totally dust. It took a long time for us to even be able to walk over there again. Eventually, we started spying on the person whose house it was in front of, thinking they might have had something to do with it, but we saw nothing. We went through so many theories as to what it possibly could have been that I feel each one had its own era. The dwarf with better than movie-level prosthetics, who for some reason was out in the middle of the night, just makes no sense. An escaped government experiment that went wrong. The paranoia was overwhelming during that era. Some cryptoid, yes, I actually started reading cryptozoology books during this era, etc. We never got to the bottom of it, and we never saw it again. To this day, I have no idea what the f*** it was, and I never told anyone about it because I feel like people will think I'm completely insane. This is my first time ever posting about it in public. You know, I've replayed that memory so many times in my head that I actually think it's a detriment to it. Like I said, my ex and I each have our own version of it that's slightly different. It's been 16 years since it happened, and it gets fainter as the years go by. I've kind of made my peace that I'll never know what it was, so it's just this totally bizarre thing that me and this woman, who I don't even talk to anymore, share. Just the two of us, no one else. I don't know how to shorten this ghost story into a tidy little Reddit comment, so I'll just share the whole thing. This absolutely happened to me about 10 years ago out in the sticks. Rainy Friday night in the backwoods of the Midwest. The kind of rain you only get in the fall where the leaves are sticking to your headlights. You know when the raindrops fill up your vision so fast between swipes of the windshield wipers that it feels like you're watching the world at a lowered FPS? Yeah, that kind of rain. No other cars on the road. Why would there be? I was filled with a sinking, no one should not be driving in this weather feeling. Even though I hadn't seen another car for 20 minutes on the road, I was driving slow and steady due to the low visibility when I came to a full stop to avoid an obstacle in the road. At first I thought I was looking at the belly of a deer that had been stuck in the road, but it moved without seeming to be in any pain, and I realized it was an old, sleepy-looking dog, but it was lying down on the road. Windshield wipers pounded away, showing it starting to move. Even in the limited visibility, it was easy to see because it was huge and white. It lifted its head and looked at me, and I thought, oh my god, someone hit this poor dog in this awful weather, but I was mistaken. It moved with ease and familiarity. The dog lifted its head in a sleepy sort of way, and its tail started to wag. It stood all the way up and looked at me, wagging its tail like he was greeting a friend. I sat there white-knuckling the steering wheel for a moment before coming to my senses and honking my horn. The dog took a few steps and then sat down and looked at me, tail slowly thumping, rain just pouring right onto it. I rolled my window down and called to it, but it didn't move. I was too freaked out to get out of my car and didn't want to get soaked, so I kind of just sat there processing. You know when you see something that is 0.01% of the realm of possibility? It was possible this was a big white dog. It was possible it was sitting there in the road for some reason in this heavy storm. My mind was clinging to these thoughts while the rest of my body was screaming that this was absolutely something supernatural. Shocked, I sat there probably about 1 minute or so for the entire encounter. Then the dog turned its head, listened, and then slowly stood up and started patiently and calmly walking the rest of the way across the road. Once it was about to cross the opposite side of the road, into the tall grass of the ditch, it vanished. I was watching this strange white dog so closely, shocked and curious and in denial, but I'm telling you that the second its first paw left the gravel road, it just disappeared. A trick of the light, the rain, the visibility, it just moved really fast into the tall grass maybe. Surely I was mistaken. On and on I rationalized and still do every time I tell this story. Shaking, I continued driving, coming up to an old horse farm up the way that was a disturbance up ahead. I made out a cell phone light being waved in the air and a man in a slicker flagging to get my attention just as I crested the top of the next hill. Once I was closer, I noticed the red flashing lights and the barely visible crash up ahead just past the top of the hill. A huge truck was crashed into a ditch, partially blocking the lane just past the hills where I never would have seen it in time to stop. Another car was stopped to help, and that driver was the one flagging me down. I asked them what happened. They said they were driving when the truck in front of them lost control on the rainy gravel and ended up in the ditch. He had stopped to check on the driver while calling the police, and an ambulance was already on the way. He told me to get home safe and to drive carefully. He was literally still shaking and holding the cell phone in his hand when he spoke to me. He had just called. It had just happened. I missed potentially being hit by about 1 minute exactly, as I'm guessing. If I hadn't been spooked and driving extra cautious after seeing the dog, I might have plowed right into that truck. If I hadn't been stopped in the road for that fateful minute or so while the dog stopped me, then that truck might have plowed right into me. According to my mom, there was a report soon after that the person driving the truck had been under the influence, but thankfully there were no casualties. I think the dog is the reason I didn't die in that crash. How I avoided it altogether, real or ghost, had stopped me in the road and quite possibly saved my life. In 2017, we were floating down the Sandy River in Oregon. It was my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and myself. As a surprise to us all, a giant fish jumped out of the river right in front of us and back into the water. It was either a sturgeon or a giant salmon. Not 2 seconds later, we had a giant bird fly above us, and it was a bald eagle. This was so cool because we're from Indiana and don't typically get to see them. Not 30 seconds later, we were coming around a bend and there were 2 butt-naked lesbians bathing in the river. It was probably the greatest day of our lives. LOL. FIFA 2006 on my PS2. I wanted to have fun drawing out the countries and put them by groups like it's actually done in the World Cup draw. I wrote all 32 teams in separate papers, rolled them up, and put them into a jar. I assumed I could draw them out and manually plug them into the group in my FIFA game. I drew out countries and would place them in their respective 4 teams per group on the floor. When it came to manually setting it up on FIFA, I couldn't. To my surprise, shuffle all 32 teams was my only option. I was frustrated more than anything because I just wasted my time doing all this, this. I pressed shuffle, and what in the world? Every single country I drew was in the exact group in my FIFA game, as I physically had them on the floor. I couldn't believe my eyes. I kept looking at the groups on the floor and back at the TV. I thought someone was playing a prank on me. But who would? It's just 15-year-old me in my room on a Saturday afternoon. I still think about this and can't understand what is the likelihood of this even happening. Growing up, my dad would take us kids through the desert or middle of nowhere every weekend to go to the vacation place, a camper near a river. The drive was like 10 hours, 1 lane, old road in the middle of the desert, nothing around for hundreds of miles. Like if your car broke down and you wandered off, you'll just die. And this happened seasonally where someone less careful gets confused and would go for a walk past the dunes where they came from and died from exposure. You always had to pack a bunch of water, food, and camping toilet because there was no rest stops. If the car broke down, your best bet for safety was to pull off the side of the road, hang a piece of cloth off the window of your vehicle so the sun didn't fry you, and wait for a trucker to stop by. They were one every 12 hours or so. Just the old truckers who preferred to take the old road, and they had a moral code to always check on stopped vehicles because their radios had better connection than early cell phones. Because the circumstance and heat, Dad usually started driving at 9 to 10 p.m. and would drive until morning. Plus, this meant the kids had no energy to fight over the radio, snacks, or toys, LOL. We usually just settled in to listen to whatever CD Dad put on, usually classic rock on low volume, and slept or snacked or read a book by flashlight. Every night you could watch the UFOs fly around. In case we were sleeping, Dad would always call to the back seat, "Hey kids, wake up. The space aliens are here." This was before drones, mind you, but you could see the little balls in the sky that flew in their own patterns that didn't match any aircraft I knew about. It was a beautiful sight over the dunes. They stayed a bit farther away from the road, just flying over the open desert. It was well known to the people who used that road. You could see UFOs there so often, but most people were too scared to go.